like to thank everyone who's been involved in putting on this forum. It's much appreciated. Again, my name is Mark Hammad, and we have some fantastic, unique, and one-of-a-kind green spaces in Atlanta. Both Piedmont Park and Centennial Park are top 10 destinations in Atlanta for residents and visitors alike. However, the city has not been meeting their obligation with respect to these parks and all parks in the city. Crime in the parks has everyone questioning if they are a safe destination for them and their families. Parks in Atlanta lack proper maintenance and cleaning. Both the crime and cleanliness deter people from enjoying our parks. The status quo is not working, and this is impacting some of our premier assets. We need change. My number one priority is to tackle the crime, and my number two priority is the improvement of basic city services, which includes the parks. I will ensure that all parks are safe and people feel safe going to the parks. Secondly, we need to ensure that the parks are clean and well maintained and have the amenities that are desirable. Thank you.
To advance a sustainable future for Atlanta, we must focus attention on both our urban spaces and our natural spaces and resources. Atlanta's projected population growth of approximately 106,000 people over the next 10 years further stresses the current challenge of making intentional decisions regarding our use of land that support our local ecology, our economy, and our quality of life in equal measure. As the city grows, how will you balance the need to protect trees and green space with other city priorities, namely public safety and affordable housing, which are often positioned in either or terms?
First of all, the city has a lot of city-owned land, and we need to strategically evaluate. We have a lot of other priorities. You mentioned affordable housing. So we need to strategically evaluate what is the best and highest use of that land, and that includes conservation as the best and highest use conservation of that land. Secondly, my number two priority is basic city services, and that includes city parks. So, right now, the city has a good amount of green space per capita, but it's not always accessible. So a lot of people in neighborhoods don't have a park that's within 5 or 10 minutes walking distance of them. So my priority would be focusing on underserved neighborhoods where there's not currently a park and making sure that everyone has access to a neighborhood park and that improved quality of life that comes along with that access.
How will you ensure that major new park investments do not displace existing members of the community who cannot afford higher rents and taxes that are likely to result from quality of life improvements?
I think, I mentioned before, one of my focuses is neighborhood parks. So when we talk about displacement, what really comes to mind is you look at the Beltline is a great example. The Beltline's fantastic. I love going there. I think everyone does. But the reason it's so great is it's one of a kind. We really don't have anything else like it in the city. And anytime there's, when the Beltline was announced, it just drew so many investors and speculators to neighborhoods that were even remotely in proximity to the Beltline. And that's causing displacement. So, we focus on neighborhood parks and these amenities. We can start to expand these. So all of a sudden, the Beltline isn't the only place where you can go and have a nice greenway to walk or bike for miles at a time. So when we start to connect neighborhoods and put in these neighborhood amenities, it takes pressure off of this displacement. And, consequently, it also, improves quality of life in those neighborhoods. And then the last thing we can look at as a template is the West Side Future Fund. That's something that's been in place for a number of years to try to limit displacement and keep long-term residents in their homes. And we know as we make these investments, we need to identify these opportunities like the West Side Future Fund first before we go announce these projects that is going to attract investors and speculators.
Thank you. While greater public investment is necessary to build and maintain a world-class park system, private dollars are being left off the table. The philanthropic community has expressed to its nonprofit partners an interest in additional investment in green space if the city committed additional dollars to maintenance. Further, a lack of adequate resources for park maintenance puts park conservancies and friends groups in the position of compensating for a lack of public resources instead of leveraging private dollars to make good parks even better. So, how will you work with park conservancies or friends groups and philanthropic community organizations to ensure all available dollars are leveraged for a better park system?
Sure, that's a great question. I think the answer is partially in the question, but we'd hope that the philanthropic dollars that come into the parks are being used for capital improvements and amenities. And right now they're not. They're being used to backfill essentially what the city should be providing. It's the city's obligation to maintain the assets that they have. And if they can't even do that right now, even with some philanthropic dollars, it really calls into question the trust. So that's one of my priorities is basic city services. We have to get a hold of this. We have to be able to maintain the parks, make them safe, and make sure that they have the amenities that people want. That's going to do two things. Number one, it's going to make the parks enjoyable again for the quality of life. And number two, it's going to build trust with the citizens, but also these groups that are so crucial. And to tell them, we can do this and we can execute, and your dollars are going to be used wisely.
Equity is about creating policies, structures, processes, and tools for all people to prosper, including low income and people of color. So what policies, structures, processes, and tools will you advance in your administration to ensure that historically disenfranchised communities receive equitable investments in their parks and their green spaces, as well as public resources necessary to maintain them?
All right, thank you. The tools and policies I'm going to use, there's multiple. Number one, my number two priority behind crime is basic city services. And right now, it's not equitable how these basic city services are being spread across the city. So I'm going to establish a baseline level of basic city services that all neighborhoods will receive, period. Secondly, I want to invest in neighborhood parks and make sure that people have access to parks, no more than 5 or 10 minutes walking distance to a park. The third thing is cleaning up the parks and making sure that they're safe, that they're going to be a destination where people want to go. We have to take care of our existing assets and parks right now before we talk about moving on to new investments. We have to build that trust in the community. So right now, when we talk about equity, I mean, this is one thing that really, angers me is we drive through, there are too many neighborhoods in this city that just have streets and parks filled with trash and litter and debris. And they have been, under invested in for too long. And that really angers me. And unfortunately, these neighborhoods that lack investment, these are minority neighborhoods. So they deserve a baseline level of services as good as any other area of the city. We have to build that trust with every neighborhood and tell them, we care. No matter where you live, no matter where you are in life, we care and you deserve better.
We struggle to slow the loss of mature trees and increase the planting of new ones. For the last 3 years, there's been an effort to rewrite Atlanta's tree protection ordinance so that we can better enforce the protection of trees from illegal and unnecessary removal. Do you support a stronger tree ordinance? And how will you address issues of enforcement?
Sure, thank you. Trees, trees, trees. I live in Buckhead, and this is, this is certainly on a lot of people's minds. One thing I'll say about the current tree ordinance is I think some developers look at it as kind of like they have a pass, right? They can just go clear cut a lot and all they have to pay is a fine. And for some of these developments, I mean, the dollar values involved here, that fine's inconsequential. So I think number one, we have to get rid of that. And, again, just where I live in Buckhead, it drives me nuts to drive around and you see some developers just clear cut an entire lot and, a new house or development that goes up takes up a portion of that. So yes, I will support a rewrite of the tree ordinance. And we do have to include developers and go to them rather than mandating here's what you will do. Include them in the process and say, what's workable going forward with the developers. I think that will be most successful working with the neighborhoods, the community, and the developers.
The video that opened this session spoke of the need for a green space mayor. Please tell us why you see yourself as that green space champion.
We need to protect what we have. Right now, we're failing to protect and maintain our current green space. So the status quo is not working and we need change. I will bring that change, and I've been very clear that my priority includes basic city services, and that includes parks as well. I'm going to invest in neighborhood parks. I'm going to make sure that everyone has access to a park, and I'm going to make sure it brings a greater quality of life to every resident in Atlanta.